This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
My name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
And thanks for making your way back into this episode. Hopefully you're one of our longtime listeners, all 10 of you. And if you are, you may recognize the voice of our other little guest today, Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I am a senior studying environmental engineering.
Christina, have you counted how many times you've been on the podcast? I think we're getting up to 10.
Are we? Maybe. It feels like that.
It feels like it. I think you're one of our most regular contributors. You're doing the most work on the podcast, I think, outside of Audrey. So thanks for doing this. You come to us with a really cool and very relevant topic here. Internships this last summer, right?
Yes. So I talked to a bunch of different students who had internships this past summer. And of course, with everything going on, they were a little different than they all expected. And we get into that a little bit of what they thought they would get out of it and then what they actually did. But I talked to Emma, who's a mechanical engineer and interned at Northrop, Chris, who is a civil engineer and interned with Turner Construction, and Dania, who's an electrical and computer engineer and interned with Toyota.
I think this is really interesting. Like I think a few episodes back, we talked to Dr. Radovich on how hands-on courses could be done remotely during the pandemic. And then I think this conversation, 3 different examples, because everybody's different, about how these summer internships occurred. You said Chris was actually in person, you said?
Yeah, he was in person. He was able to do site visits. And because it was construction work, that helped a lot of the way. But Dania and Emma were all virtual, but they still got to do really cool things. Dania even talks about how she filed a patent this summer for the work that she did. So She was able to do an amazing amount of work, even though it was all remote and from her home.
It's often that I feel, I don't know what the right word is, but I just feel so inadequate when I talk to you all as engineering students. And then I think, well, there's not a lot we can do from our bedrooms anyway. And then of course you prove me wrong, and students are filing patents while working remotely from their bedrooms. And I'm just super proud about the shelf I put up last week. So that's exciting. Well, without further ado, let's get out of the way, and we'll hand it over to you, Christina, to take it in all the way. Oh gosh, I can't even talk today. Again, this is how inadequate I am. Christina, why don't you take it from here and talk about these internships with the students?
So I am here with Emma. Emma, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, totally. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Robertson, and I'm currently a senior studying mechanical engineering. And throughout my time at USC, I've been a member of the sorority Delta Gamma and held a position there being director of recruitment. Last summer, I studied abroad in Paris through the Viterbi Summer Overseas program. I was also on RPL my sophomore year, and then I competed in a Boeing case competition during my sophomore year as well.
Oh, wow. That's actually like a really cool resume you have. I do want to ask, though, where are you Zooming from right now?
I'm Zooming from my senior house in LA, right outside campus.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're a mechanical engineering student in your senior year, right?
Yes, correct.
And you've done all these things previously. Like, you sound like you've had some really exciting summers, but what did you do this past summer?
This past summer, I interned at Northrop Grumman as a product engineering intern, and I was in the space systems division. And then within that, I was working with the electronics and payloads group, specifically on their power and control packaging.
Oh, cool. What type of projects? That's a lot of words. And as an environmental engineer, I'm a bit intimidated by all of them. But what type of projects did you work on? That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so I worked on 3 different programs while there this summer, and then all of them involved working with the electronic hardware that goes into satellites. And then more specifically, I was working with a payload data processor for one of the programs. But mainly throughout the summer, I was working on CAD, and CAD is computer-aided design. And the CAD program that Northrop uses is PTC Creo. So within that, I was developing models and drawings for unit-level hardware, and then designing and developing test fixtures. And then I also learned how to work in Innovia, which is a product lifecycle management software, which just manages the life cycles of drawings and CAD models and gets them approved for signatures and manufacturing, stuff like that.
That's really cool. Did you learn most of this stuff like on the job, or was it a balance of coursework that you learned previously and then stuff you learned there?
I would say it's a balance of both. USC does offer a lot of CAD courses, which is really awesome. I think that was a huge help with my internship this summer. There's that AME 308 class, which teaches the NX CAD class, and that you're also working with the CAD models and drawings. So that was very applicable because most CAD softwares are very, very similar. So I know as a freshman, I took that intro class to SolidWorks, and then as a junior, I took that more advanced CAD class in NX. And so both of those were very, very applicable to what I did this summer. Even though I did learn a new CAD software, the Creo one, I found it very helpful with classes I took. And then a lot of it was also kind of learning on the go, but everyone was extremely helpful and answering any questions I had, and I was able to pick it up pretty quickly.
That's awesome. I know that Northrop specifically recruits a lot from USC. So how did you get this internship? What types of events did you go to? How did your interview process go? Things like that.
Yeah, I actually got this position after attending the Society of Women Engineers conference in Anaheim. And so that's basically a big conference set up where there's networking, there's guest speakers, events going on. So it's over a couple days, and I went with one of my friends, listened to guest speakers, and then later in the day, there's that whole career fair they host. So there's a ton of companies there, from Boeing to Northrop to Honeywell. And basically what I did is it was a networking event. You would approach people, talk to people about your interests, and then if they had an interest in you, they would let you know that you moved on further in an interview process. And then I did a couple rounds of interviewing and then received an offer from them. And that was all through the SWE conference, which was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also went to the SWE conference last year in Anaheim. It was super huge, and they bring in so many companies from so many different backgrounds. I didn't even know that Northrop was there. Well, of course they had to be because they're such a big company, but it is literally such a huge room when you walk in that is kind of overwhelming.
It was. It was so fun. I would so recommend that to anyone. I thought it was really well put together and a great learning experience for networking and interviewing and all of that.
Definitely. Did you go into the conference this is a recruitment grind, I want to get an internship out of this, or did you just kind of passively get that internship?
No, yeah, my main goal for sure was to try to find an internship, but I also just had an interest in kind of networking and just getting that exposure to different companies. So just kind of took the day as it was, and just talked with Northrop, interviewed them, loved the company. And so, yeah, my goal was to get an internship, but also that conference is great for so many other reasons besides that.
That's so cool. Pivoting back to your time at Northrop, what would you say your day looked like? Did you work remote or were you in person?
Yes, sadly, I was working from home, just in my actual home in Orange County. I was supposed to be in the Manhattan Beach office, but I was working remotely because of COVID. But yeah, my typical day was I would start around 8 a.m. I had a couple calls and meetings throughout the day. Again, I worked a lot in CAD, so that was really, really fun. I really enjoy modeling in CAD, so spent a lot of time doing that. There were a ton of intern socials planned throughout the summer with Zoom and Skype and all of that, so that was fun. And then I would end my day around 6 p.m.
Very cool. Did you find it hard to work remotely, or do you feel like you still got a good amount of takeaway from that?
It was a little difficult to adapt to at first, but I got a lot from this internship and loved every part of it and felt like I really grew in my engineering skills and my CAD skills. And I think you learn a lot about communication skills through working just online through videos and phone calls versus an in-person interaction. So I really think I benefited from being online and still got the full internship experience.
Definitely. So what was your favorite part of the internship overall?
Ooh, that's a hard one. There's so many positive things about my experience this summer with Northrop, but if I could pinpoint a couple of my favorite parts, I would say one is the fact that I got to work on multiple programs. So I gained exposure to a ton of different types of tasks. And then another thing I loved is that everything I was doing was very fulfilling. I was always busy, which I think is really important for an internship, to feel like your work is important. And that was very clear to the people there. They made me feel like what I was doing was helpful and I was doing well. And then most importantly, the company culture and the people there were so amazing. So it made my internship so much more fun. They were helpful, supportive, and just always pushing me to do my best. So I really enjoyed the people.
That's really cool. I like how you mentioned that you were put on meaningful tasks, because I feel like sometimes internships get the perception that just because you're an intern, you don't get to do anything. But it sounds like you did get to work on a lot of cool things.
Yeah, I really found that. I love that because you do feel like your work is helpful and it is fulfilling. And I thought that was a huge thing about Northrop, is they really do make you feel like what you're doing is helping them and they're giving you work that is also fulfilling to you.
That's cool. Do you think now, because you're a senior, so do you think that after you graduate, you're going to continue with this type of work or explore something new?
I think I'm going to continue with this type of work. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the company culture. I enjoyed the aerospace industry. So I do think I will continue on this path after graduation.
Was that a decision that you kind of came to before the internship, or did the internship play into that, would you say?
I would say the internship played into that because I, after freshman year, I interned with a medical device company, which is completely separate from the aerospace industry. So I did have exposure to previous industries. And after this internship, yeah, I've always had an interest in aerospace, but this internship really locked it in for me. I loved it and was very fascinated by everything I was working on. So yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's such a pivot to go from medical devices to aerospace.
Yeah.
But that's really cool to hear about. So what advice would you give to freshmen or just any student searching for an internship?
Some advice I would give to students looking for internships is definitely to take advantage of all that USC and Viterbi have to offer. I mean, they offer so many great networking and career events like the USC Career Fair, the Viterbi Career Fair. There's company talks, case competitions, guest speakers, and so much more. And then the last piece of advice I have is to not be discouraged when you hear no from a company. I've heard so many no's before I've heard a yes, and it's super important to be resilient and keep persevering, because I'm confident that people always end up where they're supposed to be and the hard work will pay off.
That's awesome. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to mention that you think is cool or you want to highlight?
Yeah, I just think that I can't really speak into depth about some of the projects I worked on due to them being proprietary work and classified to some extent. But I do want to share one thing I learned that I thought was really cool, is that while I was there, I was able to expand on my CAD skills. So I wasn't just using what I learned in school, but also they taught me how to use Creo cabling. And cabling is basically where the user will physically build a model of the cables and create the wiring for the electronic parts in that CAD software. So one small task that I worked on was wiring thermistors to a D-sub connector, which was attached to a bracket that I designed. And the thermistors basically measure the temperature of the unit and send that information to the spacecraft system. So I wish I could go into more detail, but I will say that every project I worked on was extremely fascinating, and it made me excited to show up for work every day. So I really enjoyed the projects, and just that at Northrop, they really do push you to learn and do things outside of your comfort zone.
That's really cool to hear about. That sounds like, I wish I could hear more because they all seem like really cool projects, but that is cool to hear and learn about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about your internship experience. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed sharing and just wish the best of luck for people searching for internships.
So I am here with Chris. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Christopher Meany. I'm a current junior at USC, and I'm majoring in civil engineering with a building science emphasis.
Cool. And where are you Zooming from right now?
I'm actually Zooming from campus. I'm living off campus right now.
Oh, very cool. And you're a junior, so this past summer you worked an internship after your sophomore year, and where did you intern?
I interned for a general contractor known as Turner.
Okay. So that ties in really well with your civil engineering degree. It's pretty in line with what you're learning, right?
Yeah, it is. There's actually, you can take classes in construction engineering, and there actually is a master's program in construction management, and a lot of our classes lend themselves to that. And there are a couple, there's actually a pretty big club called CMAA, the Construction Management Association of America. And it's an extracurricular, and they offer meetings where they do dinner and learns, and they actually have like a competition that they host in the second semester in February. And that competition is what I participated in, that had a career fair that ultimately led to me getting this internship.
That's interesting networking. So you participate in a lot of these like extracurricular opportunities. Would you say like that directly led to you getting your internship, or did you go to like career fairs and do other things like that?
I did also go to career fairs, and I definitely recommend going to career fairs. But definitely this club and doing the competition is what more directly led to me getting this internship, because like there was a competition where we had to, they gave us a prompt for a building that had been constructed in the past, and we have to do some of the other like what a construction workers would do with it, like estimate. We had architects design it, and then we would present it to a panel of judges. And then the day after that, there was a career fair where basically almost every like construction company or general contractor that just exists will be there for the most part. It's a really big career fair. And I think it's a great way to network, because they know that every student there is interested in working in construction because you just did this competition and you already have some of the skills that they want. So it's really a great way to get exposure.
That's super cool. So what did you do in this position? Like, what was your title?
Okay, well, I was part of the project engineering team. So a project engineer intern. And that, even though that was the name though, I also did field work as well. A project engineer intern meant that I did desk work, which involved working with document like closeout and creating RFIs, which are requests for information, like writing those and drafting those, and also working a lot in what's called visual management, which is it's basically like communicating through illustration. It's creating like phasing through schedules and making lots of pretty color-coded boxes that are helping, like a way to communicate with like your large team and helping them understand like phases, like what group of rooms need to be completed next, or what specific projects need to be completed next. So it's a way of just scheduling and offering people illustrations so they can better understand what needs to be done.
That's cool.
I also did get a little bit of experience in what would be considered field engineering and more of like superintendent work, which involved, being on site and being able to communicate directly with the subcontractor on site. And that was a more social role instead of like, sending out emails and sitting at the desk. It was nice to be able to be able to go on walks around the site and be able to like talk to people.
So because you were able to do this field work, does that mean that your internship this past summer was in person?
It was actually. So that was really the fantastic thing, because I was so nervous before the internship started, because I got the job around like March. And then that was around the time when everything just kind of started, spiraling out of control. So I didn't even know if I was going to have the job at all. But then I got an email and it said, oh, it's definitely happening. But they're figuring out whether they're going to have it in person or not. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. And it ended up being in person completely. So there was like a little bit of a scare like halfway through. So we started rotating days. So I would work like 1 or 2 remote days a week. But for the most part, it was in person. So it was really cool. I got to go on site.
That's cool. As an environmental engineer, right now I'm doing an internship with a consulting firm, and I'm actually working right now responding to RFIs. So it's really cool to see that you're on the other side of that as in your civil engineering internship with the contractor.
Yeah. So does that mean you use Procore too for that situation? Do that? It's like the software that we usually use for submitting the RFIs in. I don't know if you ever see that though.
No, I've seen there's so many different softwares, which is like, honestly, the best part of doing an internship for me is that now I can list on my resume like all the different types of softwares I've used and the websites I've visited and the tools I'm familiar with. So.
No, seriously, I had to learn so many softwares this summer because because our project was almost completed. So a lot of what we were doing is what's called closeout, which is where you're trying to there's obviously, because this is it was a really big project. It was one of Turner's biggest projects. So there's over 80 subcontractors working here. You have like hundreds of people working on site. So there's going to be thousands of documents that need to be completed and, filed. So you learn so much about organization because we have to put all these files together and find which ones are completed and which ones still need work to be done. So then I had to learn these 3 different softwares where I had to place the file in one and then wait for approval from the design team, and then place it in another one and get approval from the owner, and then place it back into the one for the design team, and then place it in another one for our own team. So it was when I first learned about that, I like did not know what was going on. Like I was having so much trouble organizing it, but definitely having to do that and the pressure of it, definitely I learned a lot about how to organize files.
That's really cool. So what would you say like your biggest takeaway was? I know like the organization, but is there anything like technical that you think was really cool that you learned?
I mean, I guess this isn't technical. I think this is a little more overall, but I think just like, since this was my first internship too, I think it was just kind of like entering the professional world too. Just like kind of on gaining a little bit more in terms of like leadership ability, I would say, because they would have me do a lot of, because when you're in a management position, I would be doing a lot of literally management where I would have to, you know, tell people what to do or like where they need to do work or like when it needs to be done. When I had to make those phone calls or have to talk to them directly, I was really intimidated at first because I'm talking to these like people that are usually older than me who are more experienced than me and having to tell them what needs to be done. And I was very intimidated. And like the first phone call I ever made, I was like shaking while I was making it. But once you have to do that so much, like you learn a lot more about leadership and like how to effectively communicate. And I think that that's something that I really gained a lot of, was effectively communicating in a professional world. And I think that that's a skill that like, no matter what you do, whether you're doing any kind of engineering discipline, not even engineering disciplines, just any career period, you need to have that experience in communication.
That's really cool. How do you feel now, like going back to your courses and your classwork, having this internship under your belt? Is there anything that you use from it? Did your classes tie in at all?
I think that there are some classes where I've had to use Excel, which have helped a lot, because like Excel is actually, I learned even more from it at the job, which is why it's been helping my classes now, because Excel, I feel like what you learn with it, you barely scratch the surface. It's actually such a useful software. There's so much potential with Excel. And the way I saw people using, where people were actually coding it, like on site, like, you know, they're using macro in Excel, which is kind of like a coding computation you can do within it. It's amazing the potential it has. And like, I think everyone, no matter like what engineering are, should learn how to use Excel well, because that it's really helpful skill. And I think that also just the organizational abilities, like I was talking about too, helped a lot, like, especially since I'm going into like my upper division classes, being able to like organize and figure out when I have certain midterms or like when I have like clashes or when I have homework due has helped me maintain stress a little bit better in college.
That's good to hear. I hope everything is working out on that front. It's definitely useful during this time. So what would you say overall was like your favorite part of the internship?
Obviously I would say, because it was in person, I definitely think I had the luxury of having that experience and having just an internship in general, like getting that, because it was also my first internship. So I've never had experience and I was nervous I was going to be entering, you know, the COVID world with no experience. And it was nice still having this opportunity. And I was very grateful that Turner was able to make it happen. And not only were we still able to have, you know, the actual internship, but we were still able to do intern events. Like we still did, you know, socially did like distance job walks and lunches. So it's so nice to actually have like fun events to do along with the actual job. So I still could have like a relatively normal internship experience. And then also I think just the amazing project that they put me on, because I didn't expect to be put on like one of their largest projects in Southern California. So it was, even though it was really intimidating at first, like kind of like going off the deep end like that, I learned so much because I was so intimidated by it, and it really like kind of pushed me to like learn more.
That's really cool. You've talked a lot about this project. What exactly like was this project about?
Yeah, so it's called the Midfield Satellite Concourse, or we call it MSC for short, and it's basically a new terminal at LAX. So it's an extension of the Tom Bradley International Airport. So it's basically, it's very long and skinny, and I think it's like 750,000 square feet. It's really big. And there's this 1,000-foot underground tunnel that goes from Tom Bradley to this new concourse, which has several like new boarding gates, and it has a lot of like concession spaces. And I think it's a third of a mile long. So it's a large project. And I think that in total it was $1.5 billion. So huge project. It was Turner's, it's now I think their largest project, because they just finished the SoFi Stadium, but the SoFi Stadium was their largest project.
That's so cool that you got to work on a project like that.
I know I was really excited when I first learned. I was looking it up immediately when they told me, and I was like calling my dad and I was like, Dad, they put me on like this master project. Like, you'll never believe what I'm working on.
That's
And it's
so
going to be really
exciting.
cool to like come with like my dad or like my friends and just kind of like walk around when the project is actually done and like everyone's there and just be like, oh, I remember when like that tile was cracked over there, like something like that, just like little things that we noticed.
That's so cool. Do you think that you'll go into work like this after you graduate?
I'm honestly like I'm strongly considering it because if I'll be completely honest, I never really thought of construction as like a viable career option for me. Like I didn't think it was something that I was going to go into personally. I thought I was going to go more into something a lot more engineering based. But then I realized that it is like engineering is more than just actually doing like the computations or like because like we always like when we started at USC, like with the freshman academy class, we talked about how engineering in general is just like problem solving. And like problem solving isn't just simply solving, like coding assignments or solving like doing like math calculations. It's also like problem solving with people, like finding creative solutions to manage large groups of people. And I realized that you can engineer, like there is management requires engineering abilities. So I actually enjoyed that I could use like my creative ability to manage and make sure that like a schedule would stay on track or that people were doing the work that needed to be done and using my engineering abilities for that. So I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And I am still considering if maybe I'll go into something more consultant based as you're doing or like something more maybe structurally based, but I'm now considering construction as an option as well.
That is so cool. And this opportunity just came to you out of a competition career fair that you were at.
Yeah, exactly. I would definitely recommend to freshmen that they should join clubs on campus related to their major. I think it's a great way to kind of apply what you're learning in your classes into a competition that's going to represent what you'd be doing in the real world. And that's something that's really going to make you stand out to recruiters. Plus, especially usually these competitions, I feel like, or these clubs do have like info sessions or career fairs. Like they do try to, not only are you part of the club, but they also try to actively recruit for their members. So I think that joining clubs related to your major is a great way to gain like that face-to-face exposure with recruiters and also just gain skills that will help you do better in an internship.
That's awesome. Is there any other advice that you would give to a freshman? Because you found this internship as a sophomore student, which is awesome. Is there any other advice you would give to any student who's looking for an internship?
Yeah, I think that like this also kind of goes with what I talked about with the competitions, but also just going to career fairs is a really great way to meet recruiters face to face. Because if you want to make them remember you, you need to really put your face out there so they can see your personality. Because like I'll just give an example, like over the winter break period, like from like during my sophomore year, I think I applied to at least like 70, 80 companies online. And I just got like, it wasn't even that I got like no's from most of them. I just got zero response for most of them. It's that when you're just applying online, you're a piece of paper. So it's hard for them to really differentiate you as a candidate. So I think that it's important to like go to like recruitment events and like get to meet recruiters face to face. And I think also like adding on to that, another thing I think is important is following up with recruiters a lot. Like I think a lot of people are too afraid to email them, but like it's kind of okay to be a little annoying because you're going to get lost in their email. So I think it's okay to just, because sometimes they just simply didn't see your email and you just got to have to keep emailing them. Even if it seems like you're being annoying, it's just, you're just trying to get them to remember you.
That's all good advice. Yeah. And it's career fair time now. I think this week they're happening again. So
it is. I've noticed that several positions are opening up, so we're getting right back into it.
oh, there
It's
you
another
go.
thing to worry about with on top of classes, right?
Well, good luck with everything. Thanks for sitting down and chatting about your internship experience. It all sounds very cool and like a very fun time.
Yeah, it was. Thank you very much.
So I am with Dania. Dania, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dania Duran. I am a junior studying electrical engineering at USC. And this past summer, I interned at Toyota.
Very cool. Where are you Zooming from right now?
I'm Zooming from LA. I live like 5 minutes from campus, so I'm pretty nearby, close, trying to get that school feeling still.
And was your internship this summer? So it was at Toyota. Was it remote or in person?
Our internship was remote. I was supposed to actually go out to Plano, Texas, but because of the pandemic, that was impossible. So I had to transition my role into a more remote setting.
That's interesting. So you worked at Toyota and you're an electrical and computer engineer, which I've learned is different from computer engineering and computer science. So what was your position? What did you do at Toyota?
Yeah. So when I was initially hired, I was hired as a hardware engineer, but again, that wasn't possible with the pandemic. So I kind of fluctuated in my roles. Sometimes I would work in like automation scripting, so I would do like a more software-based role, and I would kind of help to test like the 2021 dashboard system by writing my own scripts that would like test each individual component. Other times I helped work on machine learning projects, so I would also like data tag different images so like the car would know to like, oh, okay, like that's a person, like I should avoid that, and kind of get that autonomous algorithm going. And other times I would just kind of help around and do like really fun things, like I helped to make some masks for our whole division, so that was kind of fun. But I just kind of messed around a little bit, learned about different divisions and different things I could work on potentially for next summer if I decide to go back. And yeah, I really just got to explore it, and it was really fun. And I was so glad that I actually had the opportunity to still intern this summer.
Yeah, that's cool. So your position itself, because it was hardware, it wasn't able to happen. It's nice that they were flexible with you and brought you onto other things. Did you kind of get like a say in that, or did they just email you one day and be like, we still want you, so we're putting you on this? What was that like?
Yeah, it was definitely really interesting. My first week there, I felt like I was just kind of like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Like, my position's not really available anymore. And they were super flexible. They're like, okay, like, I know we couldn't give you your first option, but what's like a different interest that you want to pursue here? And I was like, well, what is there? So I kind of spent like the first like 2-3 weeks just kind of exploring different divisions, helping out where I could. And then finally I settled on a few projects that I liked. So yeah, it was very flexible, and I was glad that they were able to work with me and kind of give me as much accommodations as I asked for. Like they're literally like, join any project you want. The floor is yours. You came here. We're glad that you're still working for us, because a lot of people like weren't able to complete the internship after all. So it was really nice being able to just have that flexibility. I feel like a lot of corporations don't really offer that. So it was very nice.
That's cool. Because you worked on like so many different groups at first before settling, did you learn like a bunch of different skill sets, or did you come in with like a bunch of knowledge that you were able to apply?
I definitely think like on the job learning is definitely a thing. And like school's important and everything, but like I think the skills that you learn like on the job are like it's like incomparable into like what you learn. So I did learn a lot. I learned a lot more about like Python, JSON. I learned a lot about like how to like work with the test bench, which is something you learn later in EE, but I feel like I kind of got like that firsthand experience like right now. I learned about just like a lot of like machine learning that I didn't really expect to learn, because like again, I was hired as a hardware engineer. And yeah, like it was really cool. I also learned a lot about like cars. I'm not really into cars, but I got hired for this position, so I just went with it. But yeah, ask me anything about cars. I feel like I know a lot now.
What's your favorite car fact? Do you have a fun car fact?
My favorite car fact. Okay. Well, I can talk about like next generation stuff that they're working on. So the next generation of vehicles, it's like obviously like everything's going to be autonomous. Like the driver is essentially just like going to be a passenger. Like the car is going to move forward for you and take you to like destinations, recommend stuff. And another thing that they're planning on doing is like projecting like your dashboard system onto your windshield. So it's kind of like a new feature where like you're able to like get your directions on screen, or you're able to kind of like see like what music somebody's playing in the back, like on the top. So it's like a lot of just like expanding the screen experience. And I think it's like super cool, because like I'm really bad with directions. So being able to see like an arrow pointing to you, like go this way, like that would be super nice. And yeah, it's just really cool. The next stuff that they're working on is really, really cool.
That sounds awesome. And you learned all of this like on the job while there. This was all stuff that you learned and were doing
Yeah.
there. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Was this your first internship?
Yes. So I worked a lot in research before. Like I worked at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, did some like data analysis and like app development with them. But this was like my first like internship, like official getting paid kind of thing. So it's really interesting. And I was really excited. And even though it was my first internship, like I felt like really confident doing it. So it was a very nice experience.
That's cool. And how did you get this internship then? Because it sounds like a really amazing experience, and it's nice that they were so flexible with you and you learned so much, and now you know so many like cool things about cars of the future. So how did you get this position?
Yeah, so I'm actually a Hispanic scholarship fund scholar, so at HSF for short. And I got that my freshman year coming into college. And with that, like it's not only like financial like services that they give you, they also offer a lot of like career services. So I went to this conference pre-pandemic, I think like going into sophomore year. And it was kind of funny, like I didn't expect to like walk out with an internship just because like it was branded as like, oh, just like a leadership conference, like getting to know you, you know, building your network, that kind of thing. And so I was like talking to this lady and like I was just asking her like general things like, how does it feel to like be a Latina in engineering? Like how do you overcome like diversity obstacles and such? And just having like a real one-on-one conversation with her. And she ended up being the hiring manager at Toyota, like
Oh,
one of the
wow.
chief top like official ones. And like I remember specifically asking her like, how do I know that a company like wants to hire me because like I'm competent, a great engineer, or because like, you know, I'm checking all the diversity check boxes? And then she kind of just like stopped at one point and was like, well, I kind of like you just for you. So if you wouldn't mind, like I have an interview spot open like for my company tomorrow. And she didn't say like Toyota, so I just like went in blind, like I'm interviewing for a company that I don't know what's gonna happen. But I did it and it ended up being Toyota and I loved it and I was hired that day of. So it was really nice.
That's so crazy. So you had no idea that it was Toyota or like
No idea.
that you were speaking to a hiring man. Wow. Well, good for
Mhm.
you. Always networking. You never know what experiences will come your way.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so cool. Um, wow. So once you had this position and you were in it, like what did your day-to-day activities look like? Because it was remote, so it was probably a little weird, but what did you do?
Yeah, it was definitely a little weird. um, so they're on Texas time, so their day starts like 10 to 6 p.m. But for me, like sometimes they would have early morning meetings at like their 8 or 9. So sometimes I'd have to get up like I think the time change is 2 hours. So I'd have to either wake up like between like 7 to 8 or like be ready to go to work at like 7 to 8. And my day would continue until like 4 5 depending on like meetings. So it was kind of early for me just because I'm a really lazy person. So that was kind of a struggle, but it's not that big of a deal. And normally, every day I would meet with my mentor, and she was someone who was like had been working at Toyota for a long time. She had like gone through a lot of the different divisions, so she was just very like wealthy in knowledge and was ready to kind of like explain anything that I needed help with. Or like I said, like I moved around a lot at the beginning, so she kind of helped like guide me in different directions and kind of like help me navigate like my different passions, finding like groups that fit that. So that was really nice having her because she worked there for a long time and she was just a great person. So met with her every day between like 8 to like 8:20. Afterwards, I would make myself eat breakfast. And then normally I would work on one of the projects that I had going on. So for sometimes like it would be something within testing. So I would work to develop some scripts. And then later in the evening, we'd have to like share test benches with each other. So I'd have to wait for someone to finish so I can test mine on site or like on site, but it was like through a remote kind of thing. Um, so yeah, just most of my day, I would just kind of spend just by myself working on my projects. I was really close to my interns, so we'd have like this like Zoom call going on like the whole day, and we'd all just like pop in and out and kind of talk to each other at the same time. It was kind of like our little like water break kind of scenario, but virtually. So it was really fun because I got to get to know them, and like we talk about like random things like I don't know, some guy was like really into like serial killers and stuff, so like we talk about just like random things that we found out and connecting it with like culture movements at the same time. So just random conversations all the time happening, but it was just super fun. um yeah, and they also had like a lot of like engaging virtual like bingo nights and stuff like that, so super fun. Yeah, it definitely changed day to day, but generally that was kind of like the thing, just kind of work for a little bit of hours, then meet with someone, kind of confirm like my scripts or something, and then being able to test it, and then at the end of the day just go home and yeah, chill for a bit.
That sounds really cool. In your time at Toyota, were there any like really cool projects or activities that you did that you can talk about?
Yeah, there was actually a lot of really cool events. So I think one of the coolest one that I did is I was actually able to file a patent. um, for kind of like a new autonomous like grocery delivery service. So I worked with some of the engineers at Toyota to go through like the legal process. We got our patent submitted like literally the last day that I was there. And the reason we kind of came about this patent is because Toyota actually did like a virtual hackathon. And although we didn't win that hackathon, a lot of our ideas that like came from it, we were actually thinking like, oh, like this is patentable, like we can do something. It hasn't been done yet. It's kind of relatively useful. So we figured, why not? So just all of the interns and some of the engineers, we just got together, wrote some patents, and yeah, finally submitted them. So we're waiting. Apparently the patent process, it takes about like a year to 2 years. So I'm waiting for an email someday saying it got approved, but it's kind of cool to say like, oh yeah, I filed a patent. Like that's something I did.
It's really cool. You said that so casually. We just got together, filed some patents. So like while you were an intern, Toyota had a hackathon for like employees or interns?
Yeah, we did. It was like a 2 week long hackathon. They apparently do it every year, like in person, like the traditional like 3 day long coding hackathon, like no sleep. But since we're all in different time zones, because some of our employees were also in Japan,
Oh, wow.
we had to take that into account. So we just decided to do like a 2 week long hackathon. Like you do the typical like 9 to 5 working during that. But yeah, it was just a lot of really cool ideas. I don't know if I can go into detail about like what came out of it, just because like it's probably going to be featured in the next like either 2021 or 22 vehicles. So really cool stuff. So look out for that. But yeah, I guess that's an annual thing that they do, host really cool hackathons. It was really nice.
And then for anyone who's not a CS or electrical major like me who had to learn what a hackathon is, can you give like a executive summary of what that is?
Yeah, so a hackathon typically is just like, normally with these things, you're kind of just like, you have like this kind of like coding competition idea pitching sort of thing. So like they'll give you a prompt like, okay, let's say for example, we have this problem, we want y'all to solve it to the best of your abilities. You have like, normally it's like 72 hours to like accomplish it, like writing out the scripts, being able to have like a prototype ready. For us, like since we had a very long time, like we were able to like mock up a lot of like user experience designs with that and like have like legitimate like prototypes with it. So it's just really cool. Just yeah, just basically solving a problem using like coding or like some engineering mechanism to kind of solve it, do some prototypes, and just pitch your idea to some judges, and they approve it or they don't, first, second place, that kind of thing. Very fun. Yeah, I definitely recommend. USC has a bunch of them that I should probably get more involved in. But yeah, I think a lot of places have them, and yeah, super fun. Anyone can join.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your patent. I hope that you get some good news about that and everything goes through. That sounds really cool.
Thank you.
So you are a junior, right?
Yes.
So
I'm
how
a
did it
junior.
feel to have an internship after your sophomore year that sounds like it was so successful and then come back to classes? Was there any like skill set that you were able to apply in your courses this semester?
I think it definitely puts stuff into perspective for me personally, because I feel like my freshman, sophomore year, I was just kind of like, oh my God, like school, school, school. And now I just kind of think like, oh, okay, like, yeah, this is useful for what I'm learning, instead of thinking like, oh, I just need this for like my grade or my GPA or something. I kind of just think like, this is more just me practicing for like real world situations where I'm going to implement this. So treating it as like that, I feel like I'm less stressed about school, which is a good thing. um, and yeah, like obviously like some of the stuff we're doing, like I'm definitely gonna apply it, but yeah, really just put things into perspective. Like this is just practice for the real world. Like it's not super stressful, or it shouldn't be super stressful.
Awesome. So do you think that you're going to go into something like this maybe next summer or in your future? Like, did the internship shape your decision on that in any capacity?
Yeah. So I actually met with a few of the chief executive engineers and just like kind of asked for them about like some like general like life advice, like guidance and stuff, like, oh, like what would you do when you were back as a college student, that kind of thing. And I remember one conversation I had with like the like chief engineer, and he was kind of saying that like because I was mentioning that I really like grad school, I like the idea of a PhD, but at the same time like I like working for companies, like I like the environment. I like kind of like that collaborative engineering kind of feeling. And he suggested that I go to school, get my PhD, but then go back for a corporation and do research for them. Because he said like you kind of have the benefit of like still having your own research roles, pursuing what you want, but still having like that team environment, being able to like see your ideas like turn into a product that's like readily usable and stuff. So he's like, yeah, that's a really cool possibility. A lot of car companies are actually getting involved in like space and stuff, which is really interesting. And so he suggested like going to get my PhD, and then like for Toyota, they have like their own like Mars rover kind of situation going on.
I didn't know that. Do they really?
Yeah, they do. They're essentially taking like I guess like the structure of existing vehicles and applying it to like outer space robots and stuff, and being able to kind of like use similar structures to kind of like build new satellite and robotic systems. So he's like, yeah, like since you have an interest in space, like, and you want a PhD, like that's a perfect role for you. Like come back in like 6 years and the job's yours.
That is so cool. Wow, that is awesome to hear, and good luck with whatever you decide to do, but that is really sound advice. Now, do you have any advice to give to freshmen or any student who's looking for an internship?
Yeah, I definitely think like I kind of mentioned it earlier, like I wasn't really interested in cars. I was just interested in like a hardware opportunity, doing something like fun within that. I definitely think like, you know, sometimes it's easy to be discouraged, like if you don't get like the job that you really wanted or like an internship that like aligned exactly with what you wanted. I think sometimes it's kind of nice to like explore different opportunities that you think like, oh, like I wouldn't have normally gone for this, but like I ended up loving it. Just kind of like going outside of your scope of interest, applying to different things that like you think like, oh yeah, like I would never like this in 100 years. You might end up liking, or you might realize you hate it, and then you're like, right, and you know never to like go back into that field again. So again, just have an open mind. Internships don't really like define you or anything. It's just experience. That's really all it is. Just developing your skill sets, just making sure you're well-rounded and kind of have like a taste of what like actual life is like. So yeah, it's just for you, just experience. So yeah, treat it lightly. Mm-hmm.
Some very good advice. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about your experience. It sounds like it was very fun, and good luck with your patent and all of your schoolwork this year.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Awesome, and we're back. Thanks for that great episode, Christina.
So what do you think was your biggest takeaway from this episode? What was the biggest surprise that you had when you spoke to these three?
I feel like engineering is so broad. It was interesting to hear how these different students with their different engineering backgrounds applied it to these three different types of companies, because all of their experiences were in so many different areas, but we're all getting an engineering degree at the end of the day. And it was cool to talk to Chris, actually, because my internship, I'm actually interning this semester with an environmental engineering consulting firm, and he was doing the other side of the work that I do. So it was just really cool to talk to different types of students, see the different kind of work they do. And it's just such a broad world out there that I feel like speaking to students and listening to podcasts like this and hearing about the different types of things you can do can really expose you to all the opportunities.
Tell us a little bit more about your internship you're doing right now while you're taking classes.
Yeah, so 2 summers, actually not 2 summers, is the summer before this summer. Is that 2 summers ago?
I don't know.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't have my degree yet, so I'll lean on that.
2019.
Summer of 2019, I interned with an environmental engineering consulting firm called Brown & Caldwell. And that was in person because it was before everything happened. But this past summer, near the end, they approached me and said they have a lot of work picking up. And they asked me if I would be available this fall for a part-time internship. So I'm doing everything remotely just from my bedroom. I actually just hopped off of work right now to record this. But it's really cool work to do with designing and facilitating the construction of wastewater and water treatment plants all across Southern California. And it's been really cool to work on these projects, see the different type of work going on, contribute to it in a meaningful way. So
given that you've interned with this company in person before and now you're interning remotely, other than you're not in that office, how does this work and what's the biggest difference for you? Because this is interesting. You have this parallel thing to compare against.
It's been funny to talk to everyone with, because there are people that I've met in person that I'm now working with again, and there are people that I've never met before that I'm doing the same amount of work with. And that's been definitely weird. I feel like there's more of a comfort level with the people that I've seen face to face and the people that I'm just talking with over Microsoft Teams. But it's also, I feel like when you're in person, you can just walk around an office space and ask anyone if they have work to do. Whereas if you're virtual, you kind of have to take the initiative to just reach out to people on your own, direct message people, call them, do whatever you have to do to get work. So it's taught me a lot about, you know, you have to have that drive and you have to take initiative, and you have to be pretty hardworking to get things done remotely, because in an office space, a lot of the times things can just happen and just fall into your plate. But in remote world, things don't happen that easily. So it's been an interesting opportunity to have.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think one of the really cool things too about this episode, of course, combined with Christina's experience, is just sort of the breadth of what's covered. In the past, when we've spotlighted internships, we've sort of focused on one at a time, and I think this is a really awesome take on it, where you can see like all different industries, in-person and remote internships, and of course different majors and backgrounds too. So I think it's a really cool way to see like all the different directions you can take an engineering degree.
Have either of you participated in any of the remote like recruiting events that are going on right now for like next year?
I haven't yet. I've like signed up for some that are upcoming, but there's a lot. It's flooding my inbox with emails from USC about recruiting events.
That's the reason I asked, is that I'm getting copies of these and I'm like, holy cow, I don't even know how to like wade through some of these options.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I think that was definitely like a concern. I think especially, you know, both of us are seniors, and, you know, something I at least talked about amongst my friends was, you know, what's that going to be like fall, like career fair, whatever.
Right.
But I know the career fair is coming up, you know, all of this stuff is still going on, albeit remotely, but which, like Christina said, you know, oftentimes that maybe takes a little more push on your side to make sure you're asking questions, you know, in the Zoom link or whatnot, but the events are still happening. So I think that's really great.
Well, I don't know if this has made it to you guys. I just was in a meeting yesterday and learned that the upcoming fall engineering career fair, which will be virtual this year, has 109 companies signed up for it. And that is exactly the same amount of companies that are signed up for the USC-wide career fair as well. So as far as the representation goes, or the opportunities, you guys are going to have lots of opportunities compared to the rest of the university. So go after it.
Yeah, and I've always found that a little bit too with the career fairs. I've always gone to the Viterbi ones specifically, just because they are almost just a, you know, it goes in Truesdale, the main sort of parkway on campus. The Viterbi one almost seems just as big, if not bigger sometimes.
Yeah, it's always almost on par. And I found out yesterday, it's like, it's exact this year. It's the exact same amount, 109.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, and there's so many small events throughout the year too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's like startup career fairs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of interested too to see how that sort of recruiting is transferred online. But yeah, I think this is a great episode, and it's good not just for students looking to get into engineering, but it's good for first year students or anyone interested to learn more about internships.
Have either of you seen anything creatively done with Zoom calls or anything else, or are we all just doing the same thing 8 hours a day now? Like whether that's a recruiting session or your jobs or your classes, I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
How this is going.
I will say, actually, for the involvement, the kind of the thing that comes to mind, this is not career related, but for the involvement fair,
Mm-hmm.
that Viterbi hosted, or I think it was called the Get Connected Fair.
Oh, yeah.
They used like a platform called Hopin,
Yeah.
so you could kind of like hop in, hop out, right, of different links. And I thought that was kind of nice, because it gives more the feeling of like, oh, I can jump in and like ask a couple questions and go to the next one.
Yeah.
Almost like a, you know, the involvement fair in person is like a bunch of tables and the e-quad, and people can kind of, you know, walk around, give their emails, whatnot. So I thought that was really clever. But other than that, it's mostly just been Zoom calls for me.
I mean, I've heard a cautionary tale that I can share about doing like a interview for an internship remotely, because everyone thinks you can't see the bottom half, so you can just wear pajama pants or whatever. But I know of someone that was asked to stand up and show what they were wearing during the interview. So That is a little warning out there. If you have an important interview, maybe dress full business casual or business formal.
No, let me ask some follow-up questions, because I know if I would do that, that would be purely just to break the ice, because it would be like, let's see how fun everything is below the fold. Like, are we wearing pajama pants? Are we wearing what are we wearing? But was that to check that they were fully dressed? Like, was that like,
Yes, that
are
was
you serious?
yeah.
That is ridiculous.
So it's wild out there.
When we get off the call, when we get off the recording, I want to know what company that was. I don't want to call them out right now, but like, that is ridiculous. If you actually do that, who cares? Good Lord. All right. Well, let's get out of the way. Let's let it go. Thanks so much, Christina. I hope you all are enjoying everything, and I hope everybody's hanging in there safe. We'll see you next time.